Hello, everyone. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy at Passionate World Talk Radio, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guest may not represent those of the host or the station. Folks, you have to listen to my guests today. My guests are all exceptional. Today, I'm going to say my guest is super exceptional. It is an honor. When I say it's an honor to have my guest today, that's really an understatement. I admire my guest's work. My guest today is Bob Delaney, who wrote the book, Heroes Are Human, Lessons in Resilience, Courage, and Wisdom from the COVID Front Lines. Bob Delaney was a New Jersey State Trooper in the 70s, yay for New Jersey, because that's where I live, and he infiltrated the Mafia. Bob Delaney does tremendous amount of work about post-traumatic stress, bringing awareness, bringing education, and Bob Delaney has received many different awards, and I highly recommend you either Google Bob Delaney, because I could be here all day talking about Bob, or go on his website, which will be listed in the blog. But Bob Delaney was a recipient of President Barack Obama's Volunteer Service Award. I also want to say that Bob Delaney was also an NBA referee for over 25 years. What a career. I admire you, Bob Delaney. I thank you, a million thank yous for writing this book and start to have these conversations. I want to welcome Bob Delaney to Chatting with Betsy.
Betsy, so good to be with you as well. Thank you for the beautiful introduction, and always good to be with a Jersey girl.
That could be trouble.
Yeah. Bruce Springsteen writes songs about you. Bruce is song Jersey girl.
Yes. You can't take the jersey out of the guy or the girl, even if they move.
Exactly.
But I just really want to start off, Bob, by just thanking you so much for being a voice, for bringing awareness and making it acceptable to talk about post-traumatic stress awareness. And if you don't mind, I would like to read a quote from your book, because this really touched me so deeply. You write in your book, I always stress the post-trauma is not about what is wrong with us. It is about the wrong we experienced. Oh, my goodness, that was powerful for me. Really powerful. And you also wrote, of course I can't find it now, you, and you could, you could tell the exact quote yourself, you talk about injuries that we can't see.
Yeah, invisible wounds. Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
Yes. Invisible wounds cut as deep as the wounds we do see. And our awareness to that is extremely important. And all too often, because we do not see wounds, we think that everything's okay. And I'll just underline at a point. Mike Schlitz is a gentleman that I've befriended and have worked with. And Mike was in as an Army Ranger. And if you meet Mike, he as soon as you see him, it's injuries from the Iraq and Afghanistan war. It's an IED blast, and he lost both arms, and he has scarring, and he had multiple. But Mike says it very well. He said what's unfair is that if someone sees a full-bodied, no injuries on the outside, member of the military service, they just say they must be okay on the inside. But if they see me, meaning Mike, and they see my injuries on the outside, there is an understanding that there may be injuries on the inside. And he said that's very unfair to those who may not have injuries that are visible. And it's such a powerful statement because it's true. There's a level of bias within us, right? As long as someone looks okay, from the outside, then we're making the assumption they're okay on the inside as well, and that's not fair. We all have the potential for having stuff in our life, and our sensitivity to each person, especially those who serve. Those who serve see what the rest of the world does not, and that's our military, law enforcement, firefighters, our healthcare. Our healthcare community has been at war with an invisible enemy. So I paralleled what I've been doing with the military for years, decades, and they're being at war, whether it be Vietnam or the Korean War or the troops that I work with from Iraq and Afghanistan. That's very similar to what the emotional scarring was that took place for our healthcare community during the COVID crisis.
Absolutely. I have interviewed on my show, Bob, doctors, and talked to my own doctors in person, and it's so not fair that when a doctor goes for mental health, that it goes against them on their license. That has to stop. That really has to stop. I mean, the doctors and nurses during COVID were in a war zone without being in the battlefield. They had their own battlefield of COVID. And seeing the amount of death that they witnessed every day was something that they didn't see on a daily basis of where they worked. This is something you expect to see on a battlefield. And the trauma that they experience is real. And I don't apologize for getting verklempt or emotional, but this topic is very close to my heart. And, you know, caregivers face post-traumatic. And I run a caregiver group, and they're like, why do I feel this way? I shouldn't feel this way. And, you know, if people, they think they got to be strong and they can't cry or they can't ask for help because, Bob, you and I know, I mean, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. If you cried, man or a woman, that was considered weak. If you went for help, that was considered weak. Folks, we have to stop this. We have to stop the stigma. But I'm digressing here. I want to get to your book. What inspired you, Bob Delaney, to write Heroes Are Human, Lessons in Resilience, Courage, and Wisdom?
Yeah, Betsy, what happened was, so I've been in this area of talking about post-trauma for decades. It started as a result after you made reference to it in the introduction. I did a long-term, deep undercover job for the New Jersey State Police. We combined with the FBI, and we started our own trucking company on the waterfront in New Jersey. I infiltrated the Genovese and Bruno crime families. And while I could go on for hours talking about that Soprano-esque type lifestyle that I led, and that story's been told in a book called Covert, My Years Infiltrating the Mob, the bottom line is that I experienced post-traumatic stress as a result of that investigation and that assignment. And I became a student of it. I wanted to understand what was going on inside of me. And there's a long story that goes with that too, of not only denial, but of not understanding what was going on inside of me. And really I used to refer to it as an emotional roller coaster ride. I think it was more like emotional violence inside of me. I had all of these kinds of feelings, but I didn't know how to respond. And like a little child that was frustrated, I would lash out, punch holes in walls. I was angry, but I didn't know what I was angry about. And so all of those telltale signs of post-trauma, I became a student and read, and I had so many good folks help me understand what I was experiencing, that as a result, I wanted to be able to share the message of it. And so I started speaking more with law enforcement officers about the emotions of the job, and then it expanded to the firefighters. And the military tapped me about 2.5 decades ago, and I've been with them ever since. And I wanted to understand what goes on in their world, so I had to go to their world. And after the the generals of General Dempsey and General Odierno and Cone and so many great Americans, I said to them, my boots are not their boots, but I have to go where their boots go in order to understand their world better, to have credibility and understanding of the conversations I would have with them. And so I went to Iraq and Afghanistan. I was embedded with troops there on multiple occasions, and it gave me a deeper understanding. I've been at every military base around the United States, Europe, Asia, and when we speak with those who serve, we become more understanding as to what they're experiencing. Betsy, to answer your question, the same thing struck me as I was driving by hospitals during the COVID experience, pandemic. I would see heroes work here. And I know through the work that I've been doing for decades that anyone that's told they're a hero doesn't like it. They don't feel like a hero. And so I wanted to delve into and find out what was going on with our healthcare community. And through contacts and friends, I was able to go to hospitals, and, as they understood more of what I was doing, I would be introduced to doctors, nurses around the world. And I just got to back it up one step. In all the work that I've done, part of the research and part of the learning that took place for me was at the Harvard Global Mental Health Trauma Recovery Program. And I was a student there. I presented on resilience there now that I've graduated. But Dr. Malika is the director, and he has a very simple statement. He says trauma is inescapable in life. And what a powerful statement it is. It's simple, but it's true. We all are exposed to trauma. However, those who serve are in the higher risk group. They go where trauma is. Law enforcement, military, firefighters are called to go to trauma. The healthcare community has trauma walk in the front door. It comes to urgent care centers. Trauma comes to the emergency room. It comes to hospitals. Those who serve. And I also would say the uniform that I used to wear, the uniform that firefighters, military wear, at times it makes us think we can leap tall buildings in a single bound. We can handle anything. And I think that scrubs and lab coats do the same thing for the healthcare community. So I wanted to learn more and more because to me they were at war with an invisible enemy. So I paralleled the emotions of war that I had learned from the military and brought it to the conversation about what the healthcare community was going through in hopes to help them, not only them, all of us, understand what they were experiencing during this. We were asked to stand 6 feet apart, put on a mask, and hang out in our driveways and have a social gathering. That was our sacrifice. But the sacrifice that was being made by the healthcare community, 12-hour shifts, having to take their clothes off in their garages, sleeping in hotels because they were afraid that if they went home, they would bring COVID back to their families. They never had to be afraid of bringing cancer back to their family or some other type of disease, and yet these were additional stressors. And as you indicated, the amount of death that they were seeing was way more than would be normal. Betsy, I've been around law enforcement officers at fatal accidents, and at times it can become the norm because they see so much of it. Yet if they go to an accident involving a bus, I've seen cops throwing up on the side of the road because it's out of the realm of what their normal responsibilities of the job were. For the healthcare community, they were holding hands and setting up Zoom calls for people to say their final goodbyes. They were holding hands of those who were dying. Normally, that would be the family that was bedside and not the doctors, not the nurses. And so these were additional stressors that were put and thrust upon them. I'm a big believer that we need to honor, thank, and support our healthcare community. I think, like with most things, we're kind of forgetting all the sacrifices they made for us. We have to reignite that kind, and I would offer to your listeners from a selfish standpoint, because they are leaving the profession. They are burnt out. We need to thank them, support them, and honor them, and make sure that they know how important we know they are. because if we continue to lose experience in those emergency rooms, in the healthcare community, it's going to impact all of us. So my hope is that your listeners take the time, the same way that we thank our troops for serving, thank our healthcare community for their service as well.
Absolutely. That's beautiful and absolutely true. There was a shortage of doctors and nurses before, and now they're leaving in droves. They are burnt out. Yeah. I've talked to my own personal doctors. They are those that are close to retirement. They're retiring. Right. There's going to be a shortage of doctors and nurses. Yes. Definitely, there already is, as the baby boomers are aging, and we'll need their services, and it will be very difficult to find. There's so many things I loved about your book, Bob, many, and I want to tell the audience, folks, yes, I love reading books. This book touched me like no other. I highly recommend buying this book, not just for yourself. Give it to a nurse or a doctor that you know. They would appreciate it. The stories, you let the person tell the story in their words, and then you have the section of reflection direction, which I found beneficial for myself. And I know I told you before, I'm going to tell the audience, in reading this book, I realized I needed more help than what I was getting from a social worker. I realized I needed to see a psychologist to deal with my caregiving post-traumatic. And I want to thank you for that publicly, Bob. And
thank you.
It's just, you're welcome. It's so true. You know, folks, and I know people in your book have been told this, we need to stop telling people to suck it up, men and women. And I think, Bob, we need to start as children, raising our boys, especially boys, that it's okay to express emotion. It's okay to cry. And to be in a positive environment, if possible, to express how they feel. And from my own personal experience, when my husband was dying, and people had the audacity to say to us, be strong. You know what I told them, Bob? Because I'm a Jersey girl, my father's daughter, I said, don't you dare tell us to be strong. We are human beings, and Joshua's dad is dying. My husband's dying. We've been strong for 10 years being a caregiver. We are allowed to cry. And
absolutely.
And especially for men, you know, being told, my mom, God bless her, she's from that generation. Take care of your mom. No, don't tell Josh to take care of me. Don't tell him to be strong. He's allowed to express emotion. And thankfully, I have a relationship with my son where he can come to me and express how he felt. And it was not always like that, especially in the service. It was not like that. World War II. My dad was in World War II.
Exactly. Emotions are meant to be felt. It's amazing that you bring this up, because emotions are meant to be felt, and yet we as human beings do everything we can to hide our emotions. When I present, I tell people, if you go to certain bars on a Friday night, you'll see people that are drunk trying to act sober. And then if you go up to your home and you turn the TV on, you'll see actors and actresses trying to act drunk. But none of them fool us. We know.
Right.
And so having the honesty, and I add to that when speaking to those who serve, that when you're called upon to do your job, when you're called upon and the bell rings to be a soldier, to be a cop, to be a firefighter, healthcare, you're trained to do what you do. You steal your emotions in order to do your job, and you compartmentalize your emotions, and that's okay in order to do your job. But yet when that job is completed, you have to find a safe environment that allows you to release those emotions, because when we push down one on top of another, that starts to have multiple traumas that we've experienced, not only our own, but we get hit with emotional shrapnel from those that we interact with. And so,
yes.
For a doctor or a nurse working on a young child, they may project and see their own child or their grandchildren in that child, and they have to push those emotions away. Yet, when they get into a safe environment and they've completed what their responsibilities are by their profession, that's when there has to be a release of those emotions. And yet, more often than not, like I said, we push them down. Betsy, I'm going to ask your audience to do me a favor to imagine that I've got the biggest balloon in the world, I'm holding on to over my head. And then I ask, how do I get the air out of the balloon? And, somebody will say we can take a pin and pop it. Yeah, we can. We get the air out, but we don't have a balloon anymore. We can let the balloon glow. It flies all over the room. It goes out the back door. We don't know what happened to the balloon. But if we're patient and willing to listen to sounds we do not want to hear, to sounds that may actually hurt our ears, we turn it upside down, let a little air out at a time, and it makes that screeching noise. But eventually we're going to get all the air out. We're going to have a full balloon we can use again one day. That's us with trauma. We need to get the air out of our balloons. And so finding someone that you trust and that you in a safe environment to release those feelings, those true, honest gut feelings that you're having, is actually freeing. And by making those decisions, you're showing strength versus weakness, because you're willing to confront. And resilience is about confrontation to the actual event. But I changed that word. I always thought confrontation seems very negative and very abrupt. I use the word carefrontation. We're going to have a carefrontation. We confront because we care, so I combine both words. And
I like that.
Then the second, feel free to use it anytime.
I like that. And many things I do love about your book, like I said, and in the back of the book, folks, this is beyond precious. This is, everyone should have this. The Harvard MGH Trauma Program Self-Care Pocket Card. And talking about self-care and what to do, I'll tell you what, I cannot give this book away because I need to refer back to this self-care pocket card. And I love how you continuously in your book say, take care of you.
Yes.
Self-care is not selfish. And Bob, on my show, I have said many times, and I'll say it again, self-care is literally a matter of life and death for you, the caregiver. And I have seen, caregivers, and it could be like nurses, doctors, anyone, they end their life. They get sick physically because they're holding all this pain in and inner turmoil in, because they are ashamed to say, I need to talk to someone. And there's no shame in that, and I'll keep saying it until I can't talk anymore. We need to talk about it. And I'd like to know, Bob, how did you get the people that are in your book? How did you find them for them to share their story?
Yeah, so as I explained, because of the Harvard Club of Mental Health and contacts and different folks that I've known over the years, I was able to ask to be able to speak with doctors and nurses at different hospitals and within the medical community field. And also because of good friends that I had, and they understood what I was doing by delving into this, and they saw it as so important. They actually supported me in getting me to hospitals where I would go in and be at COVID wards so I could watch from a distance. I would put on the PPE. I would put on, and I would wear it for like maybe 45 minutes, and I was soaking wet. and then to watch them do it for 12 hours on and off, because every time they went into a different patient, they had to regown themselves. And you watch all of this taking place, and you understand how giving folks are. Though I keep saying it over and over, those who serve see what the rest of the world does not. And so
True.
that gave me the opportunity to have one-on-one conversations with them. And as you noted, we wanted it to be in their voice. We wanted to hear what they say. We are storytellers as human beings. We started out with a town crier giving us information, and then we've grown to all the different technology that we have. But this was important for me to allow people to tell their story, and then for my views to be interjected. And then, as you indicated, at the end of each chapter, we wanted to give some reflection direction. Reflection is extremely important. I use a formula when I speak. I wasn't good in school, X plus Y equals Z kind of formulas. I never computed it in my head. But this formula works. Experience plus intellectual readiness plus reflection equals development equals growth. And experiential learning, we get that's given to us, whether we like it or not. And at times it comes as a result of hard knocks. We get the test before we even know what the material is. And we all get experience. Experiential learning takes place. And then the intellectual readiness is the actual studying of a subject, and that's given to us to an extent as well, right? They said we're sent to elementary schools, middle schools, high school, and then we make decisions about our formal education as time goes on in our lives. But each profession studies about that profession and about the work that they do. But the reflection's the hard part. You can imagine you're sitting in your office and you got your feet up on the desk, and the boss walks by and says, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm reflecting, ma'am." Well, that's not going to go over big. We're doers. We're not used to reflection. We're not taught how to reflect. And I thought it was important to reinforce how important reflection is. And that was the reason for the reflection direction, by giving people some indicators about how they should be thinking. How does this impact them individually, the chapter they just read? How does it impact those that they love, those that they work with? And how does it impact our society in general, was my hope for this conversation to take place. I often say when I present that really my job is to shine the light on the subject from the front of the room, and the answers will come from the seats. The people that are in the profession will come up with alternative answers, and it's not one answer is going to fit all. So we have to have multiple responses to all of these things. And the more that we do that, the more that we are going to normalize this conversation, rather than it being a taboo conversation or something that seems like so far out of left field, or hush, hush, don't talk about that. Let's normalize this conversation and allow people. We've done it with HIV/AIDS. We've done it with alcohol. We've done it with drugs. We've done it with tobacco. We did education and awareness with all of those things. Education and awareness works. We need a trauma education and awareness program in every walk of life.
Absolutely. Oh, I just wish you were in front of me, Bob, because I would hug you. It's so true. It is very true what you just said, very spot on. We need to have these conversations. One thing I'm grateful for about COVID is that it brought mental health out into the spotlight. You hear public service announcements about about mental health, and to go for help. There's been more celebrities coming out saying that they have mental health issues. They're going for help, and it's, back in the 70s, 74, when I was a teenager and I struggled with depression, that was not something you talked about. But I asked to go for help, which was something you did not do back then. So I always bucked the trend. I was always was ahead of my time. Even 18 years ago, dealing with my mother-in-law, and I was a caregiver for her, I was seeing a social worker, and I was told there's no such thing as caregiver, post-traumatic stress. Thankfully, it is recognized now. thankfully,
right.
Hallelujah, it's being recognized. And I could tell you, Bob, from people that I deal with, that I see on Facebook every day, it is real. People do have caregiver stress. And, you say in your book, and I've heard other people, you don't have to be in the actual battlefield to have post-traumatic. A lot of people think that you do, but you don't. You can have it from being a caregiver.
Yeah, and from the caregiver's perspective, right? So from the caregiver, there's also a guilt that takes place if they voice that they're not doing well, because they feel guilty that the person they're caring for is going through something worse in their mind, right? And that's actually a defense mechanism that takes place within inside of us. We point to other people as if they're going through something worse, so we minimize our own. Our stuff is our stuff. And I say to people all the time, we have to own our stuff, because my wife's a flight attendant. Billy's been flying for Delta for 36 years. And we all know when we get on the plane what the flight attendant says to us. If the mask comes out of the ceiling, we have to put it on ourselves first in order to help anyone else. So you have to take care of you in order to be able to help other people. But I've heard it with from the military spouses that their spouse may have a traumatic brain injury or be dealing with an amputation, and they feel guilty about taking care of themselves. And these are conversations that need to be had. I believe we have to normalize the conversation, as I said earlier, and we do it through the words that we choose. So I call it operational stress many times when I'm talking to military, cops, firefighters, and healthcare community. What I refer to is what your experience is operational stress. It's coming as a result of the experience you have because of the profession that you're part of. And so it becomes more pinpointed, and they can visualize it and say, yes, I have operational stress, because post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, is a conversation that up until recently, as you've indicated, was a scary conversation to have. And I tell folks, PTSD may be the most loosely used term in our society. Folks, we do not get PTSD if Starbucks gets our order wrong. And when people speak about it so glibly, it really hurts those who are actually dealing with it. We're minimizing it. It's not a joke. It's not funny. It's not something to minimize. It's serious. But along that way, I just want to share with you, Betsy, and your listeners, I use a lot of different words, like I said, the confrontation, but I refer to it as mind health, because I think at times when we say mental health, we conjure up mental illness in that statement. And so we want to take away every medical sounding term and having this normalized conversation. I used to say I did peer-to-peer therapy with speaking to others who had gone through a similar experience with me. Now I say peer-to-peer conversation because, again, it starts to sound too medical sounding. My belief is this has been around forever. Sophocles wrote two plays about the warrior not knowing how to act after battle. We have referred to this on the military side a lot more, where after the Civil War, we referred to this as soldier's heart. And then after World War I, it was referred to as shell shock. World War II, battle fatigue. The Korean and Vietnam Wars, it was referred to as flashbacks. And then in 1980, it became post-traumatic stress disorder. And Betsy, from my view, we have over-medicalized this conversation ever since. And we are scaring people away from having the conversation. And please, to your audience, don't misinterpret that I'm saying we don't need the medical side of the house. We do. We have tremendous resources. We just have to build better bridges. And the bridge is built from both sides. And I tell the healthcare workers and the psychiatrists, psychologists all the time, this bridge has to be built from your side to those who need it, the resources, and we have to meet in the middle. It's not that those who need the resources have to take that lonely walk across the bridge to get to you. we've got to find ways to create environments that allow people to feel safe in having this conversation.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely, Bob Delaney. I couldn't agree more. I had a doctor on who would like to change the name and call it post-traumatic injury instead of disorder. I had to ask you this. How did you go from being a state trooper to an NBA referee? This I wanted to hear.
Yeah, so, after I had surfaced from the undercover work and I was dealing with post-traumatic stress, what was calling me and what I knew would give me an inner peace as I was dealing with all these emotions was basketball. I played at the game through grammar school and high school, and then I played in college. And I knew I couldn't play anymore, so I started officiating the game. And being on that court, what I didn't realize, then, because I wasn't as knowledgeable, but the endorphins were being released. My hypervigilance was being placated to because I had to look around and see everything. There was an inner peace, and I tell people all the time, whenever you're going through tough times, find your inner peace. For some, it may be quilting. For some, it may be running. For some, it may be bicycle riding. Whatever that gives you inner peace. For me, it was basketball. And then one thing led to another, and I continued to referee at the high school level, and then I moved into summer pro leagues. And I was working at the Jersey Shore Summer Pro League, and in the stands happened to be Darryl Garrettson, who was the supervisor of officials. He came out of the stands and asked if I was interested in the NBA, and I had never given it a thought. At most I thought I'd referee high school, maybe college, and stay a state trooper. And he offered me a position in the Continental Basketball Association, which was part-time. I continued my career as a state trooper. And 2 years after that, I was offered a position in the National Basketball Association. And then for the past 25 years, for 25 years, I was an NBA referee, and then I moved into the office as the vice president of referee operation for the NBA. And it goes back to each opportunity afforded me another platform to be able to share this message. God works in wondrous ways. And yes. While that undercover job was about putting away bad people, and we did, it really was more, I understand today, about me going through that experience in order to be in a position to help a lot of good people understand what they're going through. And so, and then getting into the NBA afforded me and gave me an opportunity to be around opportunities to speak all over the world. And then doing the work I did with the military put me in the Middle East and in Europe and in Asia. So I speak all over the world now. And this I believe, was really what this whole undercover job was about. It was about trying to create an opportunity. There's no testimony without a test. And so given all those opportunities, this is the most rewarding work I've ever done in my life.
I can definitely understand that, Bob. I could talk to you for hours and hours. You are fascinating. You are doing wonderful work. And sometimes, we go through things and we go, well, why are we going through this? And it's because we're going through something to later on help someone else. Yep. And you don't know Absolutely. The opportunities that will be, giving to us to help someone. I can really, you're fascinating to talk to, Bob. Your heart and soul, you're so passionate, and I could sense it about what you do. I've heard you talk. I've seen videos of you. I've heard you on other people's shows, and you not just talk the talk, you walk the walk. You are a kind, compassionate man who loves people, and you want to help people. And I can't thank you enough for coming on my show, writing this book.
My honor. And I have a saying: if you spot it, you got it. And what you just said about me is you. And but I'm going to offer just in closing. The second book I wrote is called Surviving the Shadows, a journey of hope into post-traumatic stress. Not a journey of doom and gloom, a journey of hope into post-traumatic stress. And Betsy, the reason I called it Surviving the Shadows, I believe we all have shadows. And what I say to folks is never be afraid of a shadow. Because in order for a shadow to exist, that means there's light nearby. And so it is our responsibility to ourselves and to each other to get to that light.
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. You are so spot on, Bob. You really are. Where can people buy your book, Bob, Heroes Are Human? Where can they purchase it?
Yeah, Simon & Schuster is the distributor. City Point Press is the publisher. Wherever books are sold, as they say. But they also can go to my website, www.delaneyconsultants.com. If they want it signed, personally, we can do that. You can put the information into the website, and they can get the books in that way.
And then people can connect with you via your website.
Yes, absolutely. Many times folks want to ask a question or they want to see if I can present or spend time with their organization. And I would offer to your audience as well, what we're doing is organizations, corporations, sports teams are purchasing the book and gifting it to the healthcare workers in their community. And it's the honor, thank, and support message that we're given. So they buy 100 to 500 books. A member of their team or a member of their corporation accompanies me to the hospital. I give a short presentation, and then we sign the books to the healthcare workers. And I will tell you, the look in their eyes, the tears in their eyes of just the acknowledgement that someone understands what they're going through and an organization or a team is saying thank you to them, you can see the motivation rekindled within them. And so if anyone thinks along those lines, please reach out to us. And the more that we get out there and share this message, the better it will be for all of us.
Yes. Well, thank you again, Bob Delaney, for writing your book and your other books as well, and for doing all that you do to help men and women who serve the military and the frontline responders and just helping people. You are, no, you don't like to be called a hero, but you are. You are reaching people. And folks, I can't repeat myself enough. Buy this book, Heroes Are Human, Lessons in Resilience, Courage, and Wisdom from the COVID Front Lines. It is a heart-touching book. It will help you. And, we need to have these conversations. We need to help each other and stop judging people. You don't know what life has for you. You don't know what curveball you're going to get. Don't judge people who go for mental health help, because you don't know what you're going to need down the line. We all need help at some point in our lives, and it's okay. And I just had to say that. And
that's beautifully said. We accomplish very little in this world by ourselves. We need each other. True.
Absolutely. And for years I have been telling people, tell your story. When we share our stories and we are helping people from our experiences, and when we withhold information, I know I sound harsh, but I'm a Jersey girl. When we withhold information to help other people, to me, that's selfish. That's just downright selfish. We need to help other people. You don't know who you can help by sharing your story. And really, you just don't know. And I love hearing people's stories on my show. And I love when people can take a tragedy and they come out the other side. They start a nonprofit. They are helping people. You just never know what you're capable of doing just by sharing your story. And again, Bob Delaney, thank you for what you do, and I wish you much success. You're welcome to come on my show anytime to talk about these issues. I sure hope
I'll be back.
So.
Betsy, to you and your audience, my hope for all of you is that you stay healthy, stay safe, take care of one another, and take care of you too.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. folks, I want to thank you all for listening today. All the information about Bob Delaney will be in the blog. Please read it. That Jeannie White, the station manager, writes, and Jeannie produces the show. So thank you, Jeannie, for all you do. And thank you, Lillian Caldwell, the CEO of Passion World Talk Radio, who makes this all possible. And thank you for listening, subscribing. Please share this show to help other people. If you don't already subscribe to Chatting with Betsy, it is for free. I'm on Spreaker, iHeart, YouTube, just to name a few. My goal is to help as many people as possible, and I need everyone's help to do that. Please, if you know someone who is struggling, who was a nurse, a doctor, first responder, in the military, buy them this book. Tell them about this show, and tell them about Bob Delaney. This book is so precious to me. I am not ever going to give it away. I have to keep referring to this book for my own mind health, as Bob says. We need to just be kind to each other and compassionate. And as I always say at the end of my show, in a world where you could be anything, to please be kind and shine your light bright, because if we all did that, it would be a much brighter, kinder world. And if you want to reach out to me or follow me, I am on Facebook, Betsy, Betsy, middle initial E, last name Wurzel, Wurzel. And if you are a caregiver, if you want to know about caregiving, want to know about Alzheimer's and other dementias, please join my group, #Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement on Facebook. And until we chat again, folks, be well, be kind, be safe. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio. Bye-bye now.